Hey guys. It's good to see you guys here. Thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. All right, so we are getting started. There are a couple people coming in. So just want to say hi. Let me know if you guys can see me and you can hear me okay. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful Friday afternoon. I'm glad that you can see me. So just heads up, I might cry a little bit. So I just want to say thank you so much again for joining. I just want to make sure you're comfortable so that we can get started. If you have any friends you want to bring them into this safe space, please copy and paste the URL and let them know we're just getting started. So it is great to see everyone, and thank you for joining us. It seems like this is like a group of my friends. It's great to see you. Julie's here, and Jennifer, my sister's here. Jeremy, it's good. I haven't seen you in a while. And Lauren, thank you. Eric, it's great to see you guys. So again, thank you so much. I'm really, really happy that you are here. So welcome to Creative Self-Care in Quarantine. Whew, I'm shaking. In San Francisco, where I live, we've been on social distancing lockdown since March 16, and with Los Angeles and California, the whole state of California following close behind. That's almost 2 months of shelter-in-place orders and active social distancing, which is taking a toll on our overall mental health. And personally, I'm struggling with the isolation because my husband, Michael, lost his battle with clinical depression and took his life 6 months ago yesterday. It's been very difficult going through this process grieving, and doing so in isolation is additionally distressing. And I know that I am not the only one. I see all your posts. I see all your expressions of grief as well. It's really difficult for everybody, and all of us are experiencing some sort of loss right now. So we wanted to come together to address the trauma that we are all going through, create a safe space to share, and some creative ways to care for ourselves while we're all in quarantine. If you don't know who I am, my name is Rachel Elnar. I'm a design community leader and event producer for Adobe, Typed, the HMCT, Type Thursday, AIGA, LA, and more. I'm also the co-founder of a design studio, Ramp Creative, and Typography education program with my late husband, Michael Stinson. And on behalf of AIGA Los Angeles, I wanted to invite you here to learn about creative self-care in quarantine and feel all the feels with me. Depression and suicides are definitely on the rise right now, and this event is benefiting the National Alliance of Mental Illness. So please donate if you can afford to help. We have a link that AIGA is dropping in. Hopefully Julie will drop it in. And so if you have any, if you can afford to, please definitely help out. In this hour or so, I want to understand the importance of creativity, compassion, and caring for yourself and others in isolation. And to teach us, I called on my good friend, Rhonda Waller-Dang, a marriage and family therapist and clinical art therapist, specializing in EMDR, art therapy, couples, LGBTQ, and who supports anxiety, depression, grief, trauma, racial and gender issues, and artists and creatives. She is the owner of the Wellness Arts Collective, located both in Los Feliz and Eagle Rock, a safe haven committed to providing holistic services that support mental health and well-being that's accessible to all. She began at Otis College of Art and Design, pursuing fine art photography, received a bachelor's degree from Pennsylvania State University in psychology, and finished her master's degree in marriage and family therapy and clinical art therapy from Loyola Marymount University. So I'd like to just say hello to Rhonda, and Rhonda is here. Thank you, Rhonda, for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Julie dropped in that link for the donations. If you guys want to help out, that would be great. All the proceeds for the event will go to NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And then also definitely check out the Wellness Arts Collective in the link on the chat bar. So today, Rhonda will lead us through a grounding meditation, and then we will discuss the situation we're all in. She's going to guide us through an art making activity, answer your questions, and then we will invite you on camera to join us and share your work or share your experience. The work would be evidence of your art making experience. This is not a design critique.
No.
It's not type ed or Decompress or anything like that. So let us know all if you are ready to start, if we're ready to begin. Let us know in the chat. And hello, Rhonda, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. NAMI's an amazing organization, and I love you. So this is all good.
Great, thank you. All right, so Rhonda, if you'd like to get started.
Yeah. So just everybody, I know it's awkward because we're not in the same shared space, but if you could just take a moment and get into a really relaxing, comfortable position. If it's on the floor, if it's in your chair, there's no right or wrong way to do this, just as long as you are comfortable. And then I want you just to take a breath, place your feet flat on the floor, just really feel your feet just in contact with the ground beneath you. And then place your hands on your stomach and take 2 to 3 deep breaths. Just noticing your stomach rising and falling with each in and out breath. And when you feel comfortable, close your eyes. And then you're just going to listen to my voice, and I'll try and guide you through a grounding exercise. I want you to just start by focusing on your toes. And just scrunch them up and then release them. And then do the same with your ankles. Just put tension in your ankles and then release. And your calves and release. And your knees and release. And your thighs and release. And just as you're going up your body, let any thoughts you have just kind of float up and away. And then your sitting bones, let them rest in, be really rooted and grounded in, and release any tension there in your pelvic area. And notice any tension you may have in your back. Breathe into that. And as you breathe out, slowly release it, release any tension you may have. Any breath that's not serving you, any thoughts that shouldn't be lingering, that you don't need right now. Breathe into your shoulders, lift them up, and then let them go. And then relax your neck and your jaws. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe out, let go of any tension you're holding in your neck and your jaw. And then at the top of your head, I'd like you just to hunch your shoulders up one last time. And as you release your shoulders, letting any tension just sink down and flow out. And then take a few more deep breaths. And then just imagine a light in the middle of your forehead. Even if it's small, like a pinhole. And with each breath, allowing that light to expand and bring relaxation across your face, down your eyes, your cheeks, again, your jaw, down through your throat, your chest, and into your belly. And allow it to sit there. Enjoy a feeling of relaxation and release and lightness and calm. And then slowly bring your attention back to your room. Noticing the sounds around you, the sound of my voice. And when you're ready, opening your eyes.
Thank you, Rhonda. All right, guys. Thank you, Rhonda. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that helped me for sure. It was being really shaky during the intro. So for those of you who are just joining us, we just did a guided meditation, a grounding meditation with Rhonda. If you're having any issues with the live stream, of course, like the whole world is on the internet right now. If there's any issues, there is a Get Audio and Video Help link down there that will help you. But the best way to get through your live stream issues would be just to refresh. So feel free to go ahead and refresh, and then you should see us. Okay, great. If you have any questions, feel free to use the Ask a Question tab or throw them in the chat, and we will answer them accordingly. Otherwise, this is a pretty organic session. And so what we're going to do for the next 20-30 minutes is I'm going to have a discussion with Rhonda herself. And so again, if you have any questions, feel free. So we are going to start. I have a couple questions for Rhonda. Like I had mentioned at the beginning, I've been grieving alone. I've been having a really hard time. Everybody is having a hard time, of course, either whether you are by yourself or whether you're in a household of 10 people and trying to work and homeschool and whatnot. We do this to keep the virus from spreading more rapidly. We are all physically distancing, so it's really tough, and it's creating consequences for our mental health. Rhonda, can you speak to how you feel this pandemic is affecting all of our emotions?
I mean, I think you're right. It's I know we spoke earlier just about this being a collective trauma, and I think that's exactly what it is. This is where there's a collective sense of grief and loss, and I think all of the things that are coming up that would come up in grief and loss or trauma are coming up with that. Anxiety, depression, anger, all of the things, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross has the stages of grief. If you're unfamiliar with its denial, which I think we have seen people collectively also in denial, just sort of acting as though there's not anything going on and they can carry on day by day. Anger, there's been rage and frustration for sure. Bargaining, which is that sort of, well, what if this is only a couple more weeks, or what if this is 6 more months? And then the anxiety piece, which is a relatively new kind of commitment to the stages by Claire Bidwell Smith. She has an amazing book out on the missing stage of grief being anxiety. That certainly, I think a lot of us, I have felt anxiety myself of just the unknown and having to sit with not knowing how things are going to move along. I usually schedule myself out a month in advance, socially, personally, and professionally. And I'm finding myself really having to take it day by day or week by week, which is hard sometimes, especially if you maybe are the sole breadwinner for your family, or if you're in this by yourself. That can have its whole other layer of anxiety for you. Depression, certainly the sadness and feeling like the lethargy or even numbness of it is a lot. And then the final stage is acceptance. And I'm not sure that we're there yet. Some people maybe, but I don't think that that's, I think we're still much in survival stage right now, just trying to plow through or hold our breath as long as we need to get through it.
Got it. Yeah, without being in the same 3D space or physical space as our loved ones. I mean, I'm feeling a lot of this loneliness. And, even though we're all isolated together, it's still really difficult to be distanced from everybody. So how would you recommend that we stay connected?
Well, there's a couple of things to that. One is, the sense of loneliness that we're feeling, that all of us, I think, have felt to some degree, is, I think, about not having good connection and vulnerable connection, honest connection. I have a harder time with social media and digital media. I'm an old lady, but it's not as easy for me to connect this way as it is for me to connect person to person. And I think that's true for some people, certainly not everyone. But I think regardless of how we're connecting, whether it be in the digital age or, in more analog styles, if you're housing with somebody else, it's important to be honest about what your experience is. I have had so many conversations with people where I ask them, how are you doing? And it's like, oh, I'm fine. And then 3 minutes in the conversation, I find out they're very much not fine. And having a space or an acknowledgement that we can just be open and vulnerable with the people that we are engaging with, I think that does a lot in the way of feeling connected. It's feeling understood, feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling held. The real physical aspect of it is hard. If you're living by yourself, skin starvation is a real thing. Touch starvation is a real thing. And I hate to be reductionist about it, but things as simple as self-massage, bathing, masturbation, those physical touch that you can do for yourself can go a long way. Even physical activity, just to have the physical presence and, the awareness of what's going on in your body can be really significant. And then the other thing that I think we're focused a lot on, because it's being presented everywhere, is this idea of isolation. And I think that maybe a healthier shift might be to think about this in terms of impermanence, that this is not going to be this way forever. And so maybe we can look at it as, rather than isolation, which is this involuntary state, we're being forced into isolation, which we are, I understand that we are, but if we can cognitively embrace it as maybe solitude, that these are moments that we're taking for ourselves, that this is time that we're probably not likely to have again, actually, in, the more distant future. I know that this isn't predicted to be in and out, but in terms of slowing things down and having these moments of real introspection and self-reflection and slowness, I think this could actually be really beautiful and powerful. And in the moments that I've been able to tap into that, it has been for me too. So even just, and I know it sounds like semantics, but even just a slight shift of seeing this differently is, maybe I can take something from this, can also ease the pain of it.
Right, okay, we have some nice comments coming in. So Alicia is saying, remembering to move has been a key to my own sanity. Otherwise, I'm just sitting at my desk and on my couch. Yeah. Same thing with me. And Nicole saying, so much of my anxiety comes from the unknown, not knowing what the new normal will be in the coming months.
Yeah.
Returning to business as usual. I mean, that is definitely anxiety that's coming in the, not only coming months, but in the next years. What is life going to look like for us?
It's hard to sit with. I mean, the new normal is this term that keeps getting, it's in the public domain now, and it's kind of disturbing. I don't know what normal ever has been. It's such a funny word. But I think we have to, one of the things I'm guiding myself toward, and then I'm trying to guide clients toward, is really thinking about nourishment. Like, if we can sit in with it's not about what other people are doing or what's expected of us necessarily. I know we have responsibilities, and those responsibilities will come back in their own way. But to think about, like, what feels best for me right now? What is going to be healthiest for me? What's most nourishing for me in this moment? What kind of conversations do I want to have? What do I want to be doing in my body in this moment? We can't predict 2 weeks from now. We can't predict a week from now right now. But if you can think about what's most nourishing, it really brings you into the present. I don't know why, but for me, that question has really been fundamental in shifting my perspective and keeping me in the moment. And I think it can be really helpful in guiding and alleviating anxiety, but in guiding kind of next steps.
Right. And going back to this whole needing touch, tapping, whatever you want to use in terms of your modality to have to resolve the skin starvation, as you have mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, I've spent my time on the screen way too much. If my connection is Zoom or, these type of webinars, which are helpful, but when I log off on it, it's also terribly unsatisfying, because then I'm left by myself again.
Yeah, I think that we all run the risk of that because we're in solitude. not isolation, but because we're separate from others, this is the primary mode of connection for everyone, for a lot of people. And so especially if you're living by yourself, or if you have, social distance for your family for whatever reason. So it's important to have connected conversation that's vulnerable. And then, like, again, if you need to think about what's most nourishing, do you need a bath? Do you need a shower? Do you need to just take a nap? Because maybe that's important. I know that those moments can feel distant. I'm doing almost all of my sessions online. And I thought at first it would be really difficult to connect. And I found that at first our sessions tended to be kind of topical. And then once everybody got used to it, they got much more, depth oriented. And I think that they started to feel better and matter more. And in conversations with friends and family, the same is true for me. So I think a lot of it is that sense of loneliness is having, kind of mitigating that. It might be more about leaning into the conversations in depth, and it might not be with everybody. That's okay. Not everyone is going to be able to hold that for all of us. We have the friends and family members. I know we all know that if you say, how are you doing? They're going to say fine. Or if they ask how you're doing and you say, I'm not doing great, they might not be able to respond well to it. It might be the quick fix of, oh, just don't worry about it. This will be over. And that dismissiveness, I know, can also feel really isolating and really lonely. So it might be knowing who you can turn to, the friends and family that are real supports, that you can be honest and like, yeah, I'm going through it. I'm having a rough day today and I kind of don't want to get out of bed. Or my anxiety is so ratcheted up right now that I can hardly stand in my skin. Those are the people that you want to be able to have the conversations with. They're like, that's hard. I completely understand where you're coming from.
Right. I'm constantly seeking people who reflect how I feel. Even just trying to find something to watch. People are telling me just watch something happy or comedic. I am not in a great space most of the time. And so I'm looking for something sad or something that reflects how I feel. So I totally get that.
Yeah. Humor can be amazing. Dark humor can be amazing. As a resource. But I think that goes back to, it's not for everybody all the time. That might not be, or crying all the time could be really cathartic if you need to get that out. But I think that goes back to checking in with ourselves. Like, what do I need right now? What do I really, I need to cry. I need to be in my shower and cry right now. If that's what you need to do that. But I think that goes back to ourselves. We have to sit with ourselves and sit with what is the fullness of our experience. And that's hard to do.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about loss. I am definitely grieving some loss right now, but everybody is going through like a loss of job, a loss of their health, a loss of loved ones, a loss of purpose. How do we adjust to trauma of losing what we thought was normal life?
I mean, I think, again, I may have mentioned this already. Right now we're in survival mode, and survival is about not feeling a sense of safety. It's about not feeling like you have your sources, your resources around you that make you feel comfortable. So I think the kind of primary need is to recover a sense of safety. Safety, it impacts everything. Safety impacts our ability to communicate, our ability to play, our ability to be creative, and getting to a place of safety when we don't have outside resources in abundance like we normally do, is about self-compassion. And self-compassion is, I liken it to, compassion itself, the definition of compassion is to sit with sympathy with other suffering. So self-compassion is to sit with our own sympathetic sense of our own suffering. And that goes a long way in creating a sense of safety. If you think about a parent, an ideal parent, I know parent figures are complicated for a lot of us, but if we sit with the idea of an ideal parent figure, who's that like really soothing mom or really sweet, stable dad that is like, what's going on? What do you need? They're labeling, a parent, if you've ever seen a parent who's doing it right, their kid's having a meltdown and they're like getting down on their level. They're labeling for them, oh, I can tell you're really angry right now. I know that other boy took your truck from you, or I know you're really hungry. You haven't had a snack. Do you want a snack? It's that checking in and parenting and helping the kid develop self-regulation. That is compassion. It's, I know this is hard for you. What do you need? And that goes back to that nourishing piece, right? Like, what is it that I need right now? So self-parenting that kind of inner child that is not feeling safe. We're not feeling safe right now. That sense of loss is everything that I need is taken away from me, and I'm in this by myself. So we have to recall on ourselves and dive deep to get that internal parent to come out and say, okay, we got this. What is it that we need in this moment? What are we feeling right now? We're feeling scared. Yeah, this is scary, but we can do this. We can get through this. We're going to get through it in this moment by eating chocolate chip cookies, which go a long way.
Good therapy.
Yes, it can be. Yeah, I think it's about developing safety through compassion.
Right. And Alicia says, I really like this idea of turning into what you need in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely changes from day to day, and even within that day, sometimes it's hard to figure out why the thing that helped one day isn't working.
Yeah, that's an amazing point. 100%. It doesn't. Yeah, it requires us to check in regularly, because it's not. You're right. It's not always the same.
Right.
Some days your grounding exercises might work awesome, and other days it might not. And that doesn't mean that you have to throw them out completely. It just means you might need to find something else in that moment that feels better.
Right. And a question is, how do you check in with yourself? Sometimes you think you're okay, but then realize you're actually not.
Is the question, just to clarify, so if you can answer this in the chat, are you asking if just the process of checking in, or are you concerned about checking in and you're at different states at different times? Because different states at different times is normal. I mean, I think we all have, if you were to log literally how you're feeling throughout the day, we go through emotions. I mean, they cycle pretty quickly. You wake up in the morning and you're feeling, maybe apathetic. And then by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you right now maybe feeling apathetic again. But generally speaking, you've got a variety of emotions that you're cycling through. If you're checking in and they're different, maybe you are okay a half an hour ago, and 30 minutes later, you get a text message or an email that sets you off and you're not. I think it's going back to, is there a trigger point to kind of, I'm processing as I'm talking about it, maybe checking in, is there a trigger point? Did something happen that made you feel different? And if so, then what's the feeling? How are you feeling about it? And then what is the need? There's kind of a 3-part, owning your response to the experience and then finding out what the need is. But I think having different states throughout the day is that's normal. We all do. You might be more aware of it right now because there's so much alone time. That's a possibility too.
We're really aware of our alone time.
Yeah.
Actually, friends have messaged me that they find themselves in a deep depression or they're feeling suicidal when we're all socially distanced.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to help?
I think one, bringing up suicidality is important. I know you and I have talked about this before, and it's personal for you. It's personal for me too. I think we have to get better at holding spaces where we're uncomfortable. And mentioning suicide, I know it's hard for a lot of people. I know mentioning depression, even anxiety, is hard for people. To ask somebody, are you thinking of hurting yourself? Are you thinking of killing yourself? There is, I think, in the back of some of our minds, that question. I mean, it's present for me because of my profession, but I've had conversations with people where I was very much in a dark place and no one ever asked me. And I think like that can feel really isolating. And I know for people that I've worked with, the same is true. And not because people don't care or are incompassionate, but I think they're either unaware of how to say it or horrified of saying something. It's scary. It's scary to bring it up. It's scary to ask somebody, are you afraid of hurting yourself? Are you thinking of killing yourself? Are you suicidal? And their answer to be yes. you don't have to fix it. None of us are required to fix it. Sometimes just asking that question and saying, I love you, I'm here for you, after asking the question, is enough. It's enough to say, like, do you want me to come over? Do you want to come over here? I mean, honestly, if that were the case, if it is to that degree, someone's feeling suicidal, I'm inclined to say, you know, quarantine kind of goes out the window. That takes precedence. If this is about saving lives, that is about saving a life also. So, and then also you can reach out. I mean, like, nobody has to be a therapist here. I don't want to make you feel like you have to take on a larger issue than you're prepared for. There are resources out there. There's hotlines out there. You can offer to call the hotline with a friend. You can do three-way calling. You can offer to take them to the hospital if they feel like they need to go. There are ways that you can manage this without feeling like you're responsible. And if you are a person that is feeling suicidal, or have thought about suicide, know that you're not alone. People think about suicide all the time, passively, just the idea of, I don't really want to be here. That is, I think, a very common human experience. I know it to be a very common human experience. So you're not alone. It's a matter of just seeking out resources, which I know when you're feeling that way is not what you want to be doing, but there are plenty of resources out there. I'm available as a resource. Rachel can share my information. And if you're not in Los Angeles, there are an abundance of resources out there. But I think having these conversations is the first step toward helping, because it's destigmatizing it as a taboo subject.
Right. And Max has asked in the chat, how does someone self-care when they're an essential worker? Question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have time off, if you're working in the medical profession. I have plenty of colleagues who are, and their shifts are insane. It feels inhumane. The self-care, I think, has to be really simple. It could be breathing, grounding exercises, eating food, eating food that's really good for you or is delicious, even if you have somebody who can cook for you when you're unable to. Calling on people to do favors for you, that is an act of self-care. Asking somebody to stop by your apartment and pick up your laundry and do your laundry for you, that is an act of self-care. And I know, again, there's social distancing that's being requested, but I think there's certain things that just have to be navigated first. Mental health is just as important as, our medical health. If you have time off, then it's the same thing that we talked about earlier. I think checking in, always self-compassion. Self-compassion is huge, and I don't think it's something we're very good at. Culturally, we really like to push forward. We're about productivity, and self-compassion and self-care tends to go right out the window. So I think whatever feels good for you, checking in, asking those questions, what would be most nourishing for me right now? Is it having a glass of wine if you're sober or not drinking? Is it having an amazing cup of tea and sitting in the bath? Is it taking your dog for a walk? Is it taking a nap? Is it making a playlist that feels really uplifting or really mellow or really angry? Whatever it is that you need to process through. I think finding ways to kind of midwife through these experiences are important for all of us, but essential workers especially. And also, if you are an essential worker, dialed in for doing your work.
Right, it must be tough. So I'm working with my therapist to try to figure out how to accept help. It's really difficult after Michael passed because I had to, people were offering.
Yeah.
And my therapist is like, you need to be open to have people take care of you. I am so good at taking care of others, but I'm not good at taking care of myself. So the fact that you reach out and you ask for somebody, and that is a form of self-care, that's good to know.
Yeah. It's hard. I know.
And then something else that's come up is that people who I work with are so hard on themselves. My friends are so hard on themselves. They're trying to learn new skills, or they're exercising to lose weight. And then they end up feeling like a failure because maybe they aren't homeschooling their children in a way that they expect. So how can we be more gentle with ourselves?
I think, yeah, that's a really good question. And I know that there's a strong tendency to move toward that there's a right way to do things in all circumstances. And I think that's the biggest fallacy of what's happening right now. We're in survival mode, and survival is not, and this, I don't mean this to sound dismissive or to reduce the experience of anyone in this circumstances, but I don't think any of us would look at refugees, people who are crossing borders, and say, oh, you know, you didn't pack a nice lunch for your kids. And, you know, really, you should have, like, none of us would do that. Like, in that context, we all understand these people are fighting for their lives. They're trying to get to, you know, one place to another under dire circumstances. Nobody would critique them. Nobody that is a compassionate person would critique them. And I think we have to look at ourselves in the same lens. Right now, we are surviving. We're just trying to get through. We don't have the resources that we're accustomed to. And so that has to come internally. And the best internal resource we can muster right now is self-compassion. And compassion is without critique. It's not telling somebody who is sick and dying of cancer, you're doing it wrong. It's not telling somebody who is single parenting and trying to, you know, navigate 6 web-based meetings and a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old at home that they should be able to manage their time better. That's just not, it's not kind, it's not realistic. It just isn't, it can't apply right now. So the best way I know how to guide anyone in that direction, myself included, is I go back to it can't matter right now. It can't matter. It will be there. If the work is there, it will be there when we're done. Productivity, if you're trying to learn a new thing, then break it down into the smallest possible digestible action. What is the absolute smallest thing you can do? The same is true if you're feeling depressed. Trying to push yourself through something when you're depressed is torture. It's like, oh, I should be doing this. It will only make the depression worse. Well, now I should have taken this class and I didn't do it. And then you beat yourself up for not doing it, which only makes the depression bigger, or the anxiety. I mean, they kind of work in tandem a lot of times. So I think to just level the playing field and know we are truly all in a crisis together, and surviving is most important. Productivity is, can I cut? It's bullshit.
Yes, class away, my dear, of course.
Yeah.
So then why do we do that to ourselves? Why are we so hard on ourselves? Is it the inner parent telling the inner child you need to use this time wisely or whatever?
I mean, I think there's some of that. I think like the language that we tend to have internally, we have learned from our caregivers. I mean, we learn English or Spanish or French or Vietnamese or whatever, we're learning it. Our fluency comes from the environment that we're in. And so we internalize that. If we're hearing somebody tell us that we're stupid all the time, that narrative is going to be playing in the background until we, you know, go in and correct it. So yes, I think that is a part of it. I also, you know, I mean, I don't want to like get on a political soapbox, but we're in a capitalistic society. Everything is measured by, you know, if it's efficacious, it's measured on how much money can it make. Everything is about productivity and if it can be monetized. And it has its benefits and its rewards certainly, but when it comes to mental health, I rarely see it have positive aspects. And it does impact our mental health also.
It does for sure. Vinicus is asking, whenever I go out onto the street, even though I'm alone and away from a lot of people, I feel an intense anxiety about being outside. I don't know how to behave or appreciate what is around me. I feel very vulnerable. Any tips for feeling comfortable, getting out of the house, or even to soak up the sun for a bit?
I mean, I think that is going to be an experience for a lot of people. I appreciate that question because I think that's something I'm starting to hear as people are starting to go out a little bit more. It's this discomfort of, is it safe to go out, or even how do I act? Like suddenly a lot of us have kind of lost touch with our social skills, and there's not the receptivity that we're used to. I mean, I don't know where you're at, but in LA, people, it's hit or miss if people are going to say hi back to you if you say hi to them on the street. But now I've noticed people don't even make eye contact at all. Not that that was like in excess ever, but now if you're wearing a mask, people just, it's like they completely look the other way. And it's hard to feel safe in that environment. It's hard to feel comfortable in that environment. So to normalize you are not awkward. This is an awkward, odd time to be in. But I understand the question. I think, if it's helpful to do some breathing, maybe if you can still walk and feel safe, maybe headphones to kind of get you out of like thinking so much. But I know that headphones and walking are not safe for everyone. That doesn't feel safe for everyone. I think it's going back to the comparison that there's some right way or wrong way to be doing things. And you're getting out and you're taking care of yourself for, to go on walks. I think or you're being brave enough to go outside. That's huge. I wouldn't be so hard on yourself. I think, again, there are strange times, and it makes sense to me that you're feeling a little awkward in your body right now. I'm sure that's probably not super helpful, but I don't think measuring it according to if this was normal for you before, it's not normal now. This is just it's a strange time. And my guess is it will pass as more people get out and you kind of get back into routine again.
Right. And Mara even commented, I'm afraid to get infected by breathing the outside air. I feel that same way too. Mm-hmm. I'm in San Francisco and everybody is sheltering. And so yeah. I feel that way too. Yeah. So another question came in from Gwenvinder. How do you stay creative and productive during times like these?
Mm-hmm. That's the big question, right? So I think it goes back to safety. If you're feeling safe, you think about a child, and I don't want to infantilize anybody, but I think it's an important concept. If you think about a child, they're more likely to play when they're feeling safe. Kids that are in uncertain circumstances where they maybe don't know, they're not familiar with their environment, they don't know who they're around, they don't have toys that they're familiar with or people that they're familiar with, they're less likely to play. I mean, you have some kids who will, but generally speaking, they're going to be a little bit, they're going to be checking out their surroundings first. So the first thing is to create a sense of safety. And then we can get into, we can talk about, the art making itself, art as a coping skill. But I think creativity is first checking in, seeing what you need in the moment. Do you need to be creative? What is the creativity for? Are you trying to be creative because you have a deadline? Or are you trying to be creative because you feel like you should be creative because you have this time home alone and why aren't you doing something? That would be probably more of a productivity focused creativity. And it's right now, I don't know how well most of us are going to operate under those circumstances. I myself cannot. It's day by day. But if you are feeling like I want to make art because I just need to, or I want to make design something because I just need to, I feel compelled to, but I just don't have the motivation to do it, then maybe it's just breaking it down to the smallest steps. Again, if we have this larger image or idea that we need to do something grand, scale it back, make it palatable. There's I say this all the time, my clients probably get annoyed with me, but there's this saying, I guess in dentistry, like if you just floss one tooth, you're not getting people to floss every tooth every day, just floss one tooth, because they know that getting people to floss every day, twice a day is not realistic. But if you can tell someone to floss just one tooth, they're likely to do all of it. So I think the same is true with creativity. If you can titrate it down to the smallest thing, maybe it's just getting out materials that you love to work with. Or going to, if you're working digitally, maybe going to other people's work that's really inspiring to you. Not to compare yourself and put yourself down and say, oh, why aren't I creating work like this? Their work's amazing. That's not the point. Something that just visually gets your juices flowing. And maybe it's not visual. Maybe it's about movement. Maybe it's about something auditory or some other stimulus. Maybe it's going and looking at like plants or flowers intimately. You need to be out in nature. But giving yourself just a foundational opening to it and seeing what emerges out of it, I think is a really good practice. Not not making it into, you need to create a product, but just getting into the process of creativity, which is a process. It's like courting, you kind of like are dating and you're flirting a little bit and you're going through all of the things, and then you get excited and then you start thinking about, oh, I want to have a future with this person, maybe, and you start imagining what that will look like. It's the same thing with creativity and I think artistic practice.
Got it. Thank you, Vinvinder, for asking that question. Questions are starting to come in right now, so I'm really happy that everybody is engaging. Thank you. And Joyce is asking, how do you deal with feeling anxious when you are out anywhere? I feel drained and I can't relax while I'm outside. Mm-hmm. I almost don't want to go out because I'm too anxious or scared.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that health risks are that's a real concern, especially if you're immunosuppressed, if you have certain health issues. I think, it's tending to your safety. If you have to go outside, part of the anxiety might be around getting sick or getting contaminated. And I understand that it's a real risk. I think less now, but I'm not going to speak to that because I don't want to give misinformation, but still a risk. If you can prepare in ways that feel good to you, that are going to make you feel safer, wearing masks, wearing gloves, carrying hand sanitizer, keeping distance, and being vocal about keeping distance. I was speaking on the phone with a friend the other day, and they straight up, they were on the street and straight up told somebody, like, I'm sorry, please, can you just keep social distance? And I hadn't actually heard anybody say that out loud. I hadn't experienced that. I think having those boundaries can feel really empowering and create a sense of safety. So don't be afraid to tell people what your boundaries are. I think it's incredibly important. If you want to or need to go out and you don't want people to be close to you, feel free to tell them, like, I'm sorry, can you keep a distance? Or you don't even have to apologize. Just, can you keep 6 feet? And if they roll their eyes at you, who cares? It's better than getting sick, if that's, again, the worry. And then all of the other things I had said, just about checking in with yourself about what you need. If there's something else that would feel good for you, that's going to make you feel more grounded, breathing, listening to a soundtrack. If you are social distancing, or if you're quarantining with somebody else, if you need a buddy to go with you, and they're safe to do that, then do that.
Great. Thank you, Joyce, for asking.
Yeah,
Joyce is also asking, what are some tips to feel grounded and present at this time of uncertainty?
I love breathing, breath work. I tend to find that if you are not in a practice of meditation, if you don't already have a practice, doing it when you're feeling anxious can make you feel more anxious. That just kind of comes from personal experience. I don't see myself as someone who's very good at meditating, but I know that it has benefits. You can get the same benefits from meditation through breath work. An easy one that I love is box breathing. It's very visual. People will love it. It's very easy. If you think of 4 sides of a box, it's 4, 4, 4, 4. So 4 seconds inhale, hold for 4 seconds. 4 seconds exhale, hold for 4 seconds. And you do that 8 or 10 times. It's really, really great. It was developed by the Navy SEALs for when they are in crises situations to self-regulate their sympathetic nervous system. When we are stressed out, when we're anxious, our brain sends messages to our body that you're in danger all the time. And it's constantly being regulated between our sympathetic and our parasympathetic nervous system. I won't bore you with too much science, but I think it's important to know that our brain is constantly operating this, and it's sending chemicals and hormones throughout our body to keep us at homeostasis. When we are anxious, when we're feeling stressed out, those messages are being sent that we're in danger. So it's our heart might be palpitating more, our breathing is different. And one way to kind of trick our brain into, I'm okay, everything's safe, is to do breath work. So that is a really easy one that can be implemented anywhere. No one will know that you're doing it. You don't have to sit and be in an OM state. You can literally do it in your car. You can do it. I mean, if you're having a panic attack or an anxiety attack, you need to pull over. But if you're walking, you could probably feasibly do it while you're walking. The best place to do it is always seated or in a place that you have some isolation or solitude, but you could really do it anywhere, and it doesn't have to be, it's not conspicuous at all. I love that one. That's one of my favorites.
Great, thank you. So Amada is asking, what do you think about taking medications to help with depression and anxiety?
I have zero judgment of medications. I think they work for a lot of people, not for everybody. Medications generally work best in tandem with psychotherapy, so talk therapy. You can find a psychiatrist that does do psychotherapy. So a psychiatrist is an MD. I'm going to say this because I don't think everybody knows. A psychiatrist is a medical doctor that has gone to medical school to learn about psychopharmacological drugs. So your Prozac, Zoloft, SSRIs, anti-anxiety meds, and all of that. They are sometimes trained in psychotherapy, but not always. It's not a requirement. So you might see a psychiatrist that has only 15-minute sessions, or you might see a psychiatrist that has 1 hour-long sessions. The hour-long sessions are more likely to involve actual talk therapy. Then there are therapists and psychologists. We're not medically trained. Psychologists are PhD level, so they're either a PhD or a PsyD. They are doctorate level psychotherapists or psychologists. And then there's social workers and marriage and family therapists and licensed professional clinical counselors like myself. All of us work with medication. I mean, we'll work with clients who have medication. I will often consult with clients who have a psychiatrist that doesn't do psychotherapy. So they're just getting meds from their psychiatrist. And then I'll consult with their psychiatrist and just say, hey, Jillian's doing amazing. We titrated down the Prozac. Well, no one's really taking Prozac anymore, but this is an example. Downgraded their medication 2 months ago, and it seems like her symptoms are really doing great. We've been doing a lot of EMDR around that trauma, and it's been amazing. And then the psychiatrist might say, yeah, I've noticed that her sleeping is back to normal. It's good to have the collaborative care, I think, because it's in clients' best interests. The harder thing to navigate is when folks are, and this is most common, are getting medications from just their medical doctor, because medical doctors are not trained in psychology and they're not trained in psychotherapy. So they just give medications. And that tends to be where there are it's harder to manage, because their doctors, for whatever reason, don't usually want to talk to like someone like me, a marriage and family therapist. I just have a harder time. That's not always the case, but that's been my experience. And the diagnosis and the medication doesn't always tend to work. That being said, if you're not into medications, there are a lot of other options out there. I know people who treat anxiety and depression well with therapy and with meditation practice, who treat both or any of those things with acupuncture or herbs or some combination of all of those, maybe medication, acupuncture, and psychotherapy. And I know people who are dealing with their mental health outside of psychotherapy too, through coaching or maybe purely meditative practice. I do not want to put out that there's a right or wrong way to do it. It's, again, going back to you. Is it working for you? Is the medication working for you? If it's not, it might be time to talk to your doctor or your psychiatrist and say, hey, I think I want to try something different, or I want to titrate off, or have it managed differently. But I don't have any judgment. I think it can be really effective for a lot of people, and is.
Great. Acupuncture, I missed that.
I know a lot of acupuncturists here in LA are starting to open up because there's a need. And so they're considered essential workers. The ones that I collaborate with, they've been doing herbal dispensing, and not actual needling. But I know, just because I'm on their email list, that a few more are opening up, I think as early as like Monday.
Got it.
It'll be good to have it back.
I know, me too. Patrick is asking, rituals, tips, thoughts for the tension of always being with others? Two parents working from home, managing a child who is now homeschooling. We're always on top of each other and are snapping more often than we'd like.
Yeah, I feel for the parents at home. That is a whole other layer of care. I mean, I know I want to ask so many questions, but I think finding ways of having shifts is important. So if you and your partner can have some designated alone time, I think that's really important, so that each of you are getting time to decompress and have just some time to think or eat or shower or whatever it is that you need to do alone. Even if it's, 20 minutes at a time. I say 20 minutes because 20 minutes is actually about the amount of time it takes for us to self-regulate. So you could do 20 minutes of breath work and maybe like snap into a new mode again. So that could be helpful. But yeah, I mean, certainly if you could get an hour, that probably sounds like a luxury at this point, but I think that would be important. Another thing is just to let go of the expectation to do things right. If your kids are getting more screen time than they normally do, or more than you're comfortable with as a parent, and it's because you have to, attend meetings and provide for your family and make dinner and make sure that someone's, not having a meltdown over here, which might be yourself, then that's what you have to do. Again, we're in survival mode, and it is especially hard for families that are, it's hard for everybody in its own unique way. But if you're managing little people in your home too, I get it. I think you just have to let go of the expectation that you need to be doing something the right way right now. Your kids will be fine. I promise you. My favorite quote is, "Our children will be fine despite us." Kids are very resilient. They are much more aware of their environment and surroundings than you think. The most important thing for them to know right now is that they are safe. And so if you can communicate that, and if it's through letting them watch Sesame Street or Bob the Builder or whatever our kids are watching right now for 2 hours, and you're comfortable typically with only 15 minutes, they'll be fine. Even if it's 4 hours, I think they'll be fine.
So Fortnite could be a safe space for them.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so I would say like acceptance, not expectation, right?
Yes, yeah.
Right. So we have a couple more questions. We'll go through these, and then I don't want anyone to leave quite yet. We do have a guided art therapy session that will be very meditative. So we'll go through these questions. Feel free to keep putting those questions in, but we want to just start with the art therapy before we hold you here for too long. So we have a couple more questions. Nicole is asking, do you have suggestions on how to deal with anxiety due to job loss? As a freelancer, my work has dwindled substantially, and with all the closures and thoughts of my future income is overwhelming.
First of all, I am sorry. I know that has impacted about half of being in LA. I have a lot of folks that I work with that work in film and entertainment industry, and in my household, we've definitely been impacted. So I know the stress of that personally and professionally. I know that it's real. I think the anxiety is about dealing with what you can in the moment. I know that the urgency and the tendency is to go to, I need to be earning income. I think if you can take ownership over having conversations that you have access to, so like speaking to landlords, calling creditors. We've done that in session. I've had clients who that's actually what we've done in session because they were so anxiety inducing just to get to that place. Then do that. If you need somebody to be on the call with you to make you feel more comfortable, do that. Call in a lifeline, call in a friend, have somebody sit on the phone with you just as moral support, or sit there with you. Write out a script if you need to and say, I have been affected by COVID and I need a reduction in my rent, or I need to pay my rent late, or I need to have defer all of my credit card payments for the next 3 months. Do what you can so that you feel like you've taken some action, and then let it go. And I know that sounds like, oh, just let it go. Like it's some easy thing to do, but truly, what else are you going to do? You can't beat yourself up over it. This isn't something that you've done to yourself. This is something that's happening collectively. And I think having forgiveness and compassion for yourself in this is going to go a long way. And then, like I said, taking action where you can might be helpful. Breathing, taking care of yourself, taking showers, taking naps, talking to friends, crying it out if you need to, all of those things, leaning into as much as you can, I think is really important. And I'm sorry you're going through that. I know it's a lot.
We'll answer this question, then we'll jump into the art practice. Joyce is asking thoughts on art therapy and if it actually works well as a standalone therapy. Are there ways to do some practices at home? And also, Rhonda, are you accepting any new therapy patients?
I am not accepting new clients, but I have an amazing team of people that I work with, and I also have great colleagues in the area. And I mean, kind of nationally, I am happy to connect. So if anybody has questions, I've said to Rachel already, I'm happy to be a resource. If you need to chat it out for a bit, I'm happy to chat with you. We can just schedule a time. And if you want to find somebody to connect with on a longer term basis, I'm happy to point you in the right direction and walk you through that. It can be, I know finding a therapist is a hard thing to do. But with regard to art as a standalone therapy, or art therapy as a standalone therapy. So art therapists are trained in psychotherapy. So my program was joint, it's marriage and family therapy and clinical art therapy. So we're always integrating other therapies. So we're integrating trauma-informed therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. If someone has advanced training in like dialectical behavioral therapy, which is like more management of personality disorders, narcissism, borderline personality disorder, then they can integrate that into art therapy as well. It's not ever just art like for the sake of making art, unless that is someone's particular theoretical framework, which is also one. So there is a kind of belief of art as therapy, that you can just create art and that in and of itself can be therapeutic. I tend to kind of employ both schools of thought, that art can be integrated with other theoretical frameworks and be highly efficacious, and then art as therapy in and of itself, just making art, is also therapeutic. And that's actually been proven by neuroscience now. When we look at trauma therapy and accessing what we call bilateral stimulation, which is activating both hemispheres of the brain to self-regulate. Anything that activates the midline of the brain, walking, art making, dancing, that's all therapeutic. So I think art is great just as its own entity, obviously. I mean, we're all creatives here. And then also as a therapeutic, it's not a modality, it is an actual profession, but it can be used as a modality. It's also highly effective. So both.
Thank you, Joyce, for asking that question. Again, bring those questions in if you have it. But I wanted to start with the art practice. I've already done art therapy a few times and it's really helped. So I'm really excited, Rhonda, that you'll be able to bring this experience to us.
So yeah, I'm excited too. This is not going to be art. I just want to clarify, because I know y'all are creatives, and so you've got this idea of what you want things to look like, but I really want to just alleviate you of that expectation. This is not about that. This is my thought was to give you a coping skill or something to regulate yourself when you're feeling anxious, when you are not able to create something that you either need to because you've got a deadline, or that you just want to get out of your head and you want to be creative. This is a really good practice for that. I talked to earlier, I spoke about bilateral stimulation, and which is the activation of both hemispheres of the brain through taps, sound, movement, any sensory cues, walking, anything that activates the midline of the brain. Florence Kane was an artist, therapist in like the 1950s. So this isn't anything new. She developed this idea, and then later Francine Shapiro, who developed EMDR. If you're familiar with it, if you're not, it's eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's a type of trauma-based therapy that does exactly that, either through eye movement or tapping or some type of sensory cue activates the midline of the brain. It helps to self-regulate and process through traumatic experiences. So this is using art as a self-regulating skill. So that's the intention anyway. So it's not about making anything beautiful. It's truly about getting yourself into a state that you can self-regulate and self-soothe or ground. So I think, so to start, you're going to need 2 pieces of paper and some drawing materials, drawing utensils. So like pencils, it could be markers, slick sticks, crayons. You can use brushes and paint if you want to. It will just be harder because you won't have a lot of the movement should be more fluid. So if you have to like do pen and ink and you have to ink, or you need to dip your brush or something, it will just take a little more time, but you can still do it. Nothing fancy. And then I'll give everybody a couple of seconds or minutes to kind of get all their materials together.
Yeah, get some materials, gather some up. We'll go through a little bit of a session. Thank you again if you guys have to go, because I know we're at the top of the hour and running a little bit behind, but if you have any questions, put them in. And then after we're done with this guided art activity, I would like to invite you to jump on camera and show your work or talk about the process, talk about the experience with Rhonda, and she'll give you some feedback. Again, not any critique or design critique, but feedback on the experience. All right, so I'm about ready. Let me know if you guys are ready to go. We'll get started here in just a minute. Okay, Rhonda, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I want everyone to just, when you're sitting, you're going to take your pieces of paper and set them on either side, your left side and your right side, one on each side. And then one utensil on each side. So pen, or paintbrush, whichever you have. And then you're just going to set those there for a moment. And I want you to think about this experience, what we're in the midst of, and what comes up for you just kind of on a gut instinct. Is it anxiety? Is it depression? There's some discomfort. Notice what comes up inside of you. Notice where it lands kind of in your body. Is it in your jaw? Is it in your throat? Is it in your stomach? Do you feel it in your back? Does it kind of move around? And I want you to think about labeling it with an emotion. What is the emotion that comes up? Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it anxiety? Is it loneliness? Is it sadness? And then I want you to take your arms. So you can stand up if you want to, just as long as you can still hear me. It's not important that you see me. And I want you to start by making large circular movements with your arms. So you're going to, starting at your shoulders, move your arms as big as you can. And it doesn't matter what direction, but you're just going to start by making large circular movements with both arms, starting at your shoulders. And then you're going to move to your elbows. And then your wrists. And then I want you to take your utensils and transfer those movements onto your paper, one for each hand. And your movements can continue to be circular, or they can go in other directions, but you're just going to keep both hands moving on both pieces of paper. And then when you're kind of feeling like you've used up as much paper as you can, or you're done making movements, you're going to stop. And I want you to think about those two images side by side. Just bring them in front of you. And the one on your left side, I want you to think about that image. Notice what you see. And trace the lines with your right hand. You don't actually have to touch it, but you can. But you're just going to trace the lines that are in any patterns or movement that you see. Trace that with your left hand, or with your right hand. The left image with your right hand. And then bring your awareness to the image on your right. And just notice what you see, the movement, the quality of line, whatever you notice. And you're going to trace that image with your left hand. The lines, the movement, everything that you noticed. And then you can stop, look at both images, and then if you want to share about what you notice now in your body, if you notice anything different, any shifts, any different feelings, anything that come up.
All right, if anyone wants to share, let us know. I can start. All right.
How was that for you?
It was good. I have a lot of sharp edges that happened after a while. I was starting to feel a little bit of tension as we went. The circles kind of got a little jaggedy. And so I was kind of working hard to relieve that. So
if you're doing this by yourself at home, you can just keep going. I stopped early because it's hard for me to see where people are, but you could just keep going. You can go till you feel like you just don't want to do anymore. You feel like you're done with it. You'll have a sense of it. So I think that's important too, just to kind of let it be a little more self-guided. But as a practice, this can be really good and self-regulating because you just kind of get it out. So if you're feeling anxious, you're feeling uncomfortable, it's a good way to just kind of have a movement, start big, and then move it onto the paper and just let it go.
Okay. So to continue this and just let it all the way out.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Kier is telling us the different dynamics between the dominant right hand and his non-dominant left hand. Kier, would you like to come on screen and talk to us about it? It's really up to you, but would love for you to share and love to see you. Great. So let us know, Kier, if you would like to share. Otherwise, as we're waiting for, okay, so Kier, you're going to get your camera and mic working. Excellent. We will try and call you up in just a minute. But before we wrap up, I just wanted to say that Rhonda, I learned a lot about some tips in how to breathe. I love the box breathing. I think that really definitely helps me. And I would like to ask everybody, what did you learn in this session that you didn't know before? What did you experience today that may have brought some enlightenment to your situation? Post it in the chat bar, and Rhonda, I'm going to ask you to choose 3 answers randomly. If we get 3 answers, then those 3 will be chosen, of course. Those 3 will receive Rhonda's favorite book to help cope with compassion for yourself and your family. So I want to ask you a little bit about this book while we're waiting for you to get ready.
I think I recommended Claire Bidwell Smith's Anxiety, the Missing Link of Grief. It is specific to death, but I think that kind of metaphorically we can absolutely understand that this would apply. And she gives a lot. It's also available via audiobook. So if you don't like reading and you don't get the book, I highly recommend the audiobook. She narrates it herself. She has a really lovely voice. She's like that person from HR that you really want to talk to. It's like very soothing. But it's a great book, just that normalizes our experience with regard to loss and feeling just pain and despair and how to navigate it in a really human and approachable way, I think.
Okay, so Nicole Ray says, a better word for isolation is solitude, totally different overall. Great, thank you so much. Alicia's asking, I learned about the importance of self-parenting and acknowledging what's wrong and then asking how you can help and figuring out how to do this for yourself. Tara is saying productivity is bullshit. Grateful for this frank declaration, Rhonda, and permission to do what we can as we can. So, and Kier is ready. So we are going to invite Kier up. So I will invite you right now. Give me 1 second. Come on up and would love for you to share. And then Amada is also going to share after this. Hi, Kier.
Hi. So mine are super simple because I was doing more of the hand gestures first.
Great. Good.
I can't actually move my right shoulder all the way because I had an injury here a few years ago.
Okay.
So that might figure into it.
Mm-hmm.
But here's my right hand. Super simple, but you can see it's like the circles are kind of regular.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I traced it over again with my left hand, I went with an irregular shape just to see if I could outthink myself,
Mm-hmm.
which was a weird thing to do. But I liked how it sort of sabotaged itself that way.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like it helped you to kind of get out of the line of thinking too. Like it went sort of on its own way, even though you were really trying to be analytical about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I mean, even calling it more controlled, even naming it feels weird. You know, like I'm trying to impose some kind of structure on it because it doesn't need that, right? That's not what it's for. Anyway, here's the left hand, the non-dominant hand.
Okay.
And it's more out there and irregular looking and just it's happy to be itself.
Yeah.
Right?
How was the process for you? Did you notice a shift between like bringing up whatever emotional state that you might have and then afterward? Did it shift anything for you at all?
I'm not sure, mostly because I already feel really comfortable doing this.
Okay.
It feels weird to say that, but like I've been working from home and working remotely for 3 years now, so I'm kind of used to it.
Okay.
And I don't feel self-indulgent about using my own creativity. Like my creative hobbies are definitely getting me through this period right now.
Okay.
So mostly for me, it was all physical. Like on my couch right here, how far can I reach, or what can I get my arms to do over here versus over here? I have a lot more space over here.
It might be a good aspect of movement and playing around with that for you, just to see what comes up and modulate. For yourself if you need to, because you have an injury or something. Certainly don't put yourself out. Basic movements to start. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. This is great. I loved it.
I'm glad.
Great. Thank you, Kier. Let's invite one more person and then we'll finish up. So I think Amada had volunteered. Let me see where you are. There you are. So Amada, I'm going to invite you up. Hopefully you are ready. Okay, whoops, hold on. This is always a little bit difficult for me, UI-wise. So Amada, we are inviting you up. Meanwhile, we do have a lot of people who are declaring things that they learned this time. I will list them all out in just a moment. Let's see if Amada comes on up.
Hello.
Hi.
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 Hi. So my both drawings are quite similar, except that the right hand I have like the lines are thicker than the left hand.
Okay.
So, but both of them kind of like very fuzzy and busy, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, but the left hand lines are thinner, so.
Yeah, it's not, the messiness is completely okay. It's probably a really good practice, particularly for designers. I know that structure and form is very important. So to be able to eliminate that as a requirement, it's not about aesthetic. It's really just about the process. But it looks like you really got into the process of it.
Okay.
How was it for you? The did you have any sense of discomfort? Did you have anything that you brought up through the thinking about, this whole situation? Was there anything that you found that was discomforting or disturbing for you?
Well, so I guess that because there are so many things going on right now in my head, and that's kind of like I have to handle so many things at once. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
But I try to keep it stay focused and try to organize things to make sure that everything's still going the right way. And I guess that's just my anxiety, that I'm just afraid that things gonna go out of control, or not in the way that it's supposed to be, something like that. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really common experience. Like when we're feeling anxious, the tendency is to kind of want to keep things contained and control. I completely understand that. This might be really good practice for you, because if it's messy and that's uncomfortable for you, or if there's not control, it might be really good for you to get used to doing something that doesn't require control. It's okay for you to be a little bit out of control.
Okay.
This is safe. This is safe for you to be out of control in,
Okay. Thank you. And I mean, I felt much better. I felt relaxed after finishing the exercise.
Oh, beautiful.
So it's like opens my eye, like look at the colors, look at the lines, and
Beautiful. Good. I'm so glad. Thank you for sharing.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mara. Appreciate it. Well, that was great. Thank you so much for everybody who did the art therapy. Really, I mean, hopefully you do have a bit of messiness, and it's okay. As all our type ed community knows, it's not on a grid, but it's okay. So thank you all for sharing as well. Rhonda, we had quite a few people who stated what they learned, and I'll just list out the names for you, and you can choose 3 randomly, and then I will send out the books. I know, so you don't have to scroll back. So we got comments from Joyce, Lori, Alicia, Jennifer, Tara, and Nicole. And yeah.
So how many were there total?
Lauren, sorry.
8?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Joyce, Lori, Alicia, Jennifer, Lauren, Tara, and Nicole so far.
So can we do number 2,
Okay.
4, and 7?
Great. So Lori, Jennifer, and Nicole, you'll be receiving the book. I will contact you later, and we will get those books out to you. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that you enjoyed the art therapy, and I hopefully you'll enjoy the book. If you guys have any further questions for Rhonda, or you want to learn more about her practice, Wellness Arts Collective, located both in Los Feliz and Eagle Rock, please visit thewellnessartscollective.com. And if you're ever feeling suicidal, or you know someone who is, please get help. I implore you to call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is 800-273-8255. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. I learned a lot. I hope you did too. Rhonda, thank you so much for expending your love, your compassion, and helping us find creative ways through this quarantine. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. We love you. Be safe and take care. Thank you, AIGA Los Angeles, for the support. And we'll see you again. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night, guys. Bye-bye.